events. Welcome to the November 2019 webinar. Everyone is commenting, can you believe it? It's the November webinar already. And we're here with Teresa Wessling. Hi, Teresa.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us today. Teresa, for those of you who have not met her, just hang on because you're about to. But Teresa is with PSAV. She joined them a few years ago and she has more than 15 years of sales leadership experience in hospitality, technology, healthcare, retail. And she recently was promoted this year. Congratulations, Teresa. But now she is Vice President, National Field Sales. And she is going to be talking to us today about how to develop your talent and how to use professional development for your own benefit, not just for your company's benefit, right? All right, so we have a little panel there on your GoToWebinar where you can put in questions. I have questions that I want to ask Teresa, so put yours in that little box and I can work them into our conversation. But as we were talking a little bit about professional development, Teresa and I, before y'all got here, we were talking and Teresa said something that really struck me and I just want for her to say it again. What is the most important thing you think that the participants today need to hear from you, Teresa?
I think, well, as we talk about leadership and professional development, personal development, I think first and foremost, you have to have personal accountability. You know, whether you're in an organization that offers structured programs for development, whether you're, you know, a one-person organization where you may not have those resources at your disposal, it's on us, you know, to make sure that whether it's you're doing the reading or looking for mentors who can coach and help you in your own development. You know, I'm working on a practice myself of truly thinking after every interaction I have, whether that's with my team or with senior leadership, how did I do? And first and foremost, being open to seeking that feedback and then really hearing it and listening to it.
Okay, so let's break that down because you just did a little bit. So one though is seeking it out.
Yes.
I like when I count and it's not even on the screen. So one, seeking it out. Two, being open to hear it. Three, actually hearing it. And four, doing something about it.
Yeah.
Right? That's a several step process there. So when you are being open about it, that puts you, Teresa Wessling, in a very vulnerable position, right?
Yes.
How did you get to the point where you were, and maybe it's still uncomfortable, but how do you embrace that uncomfortability perhaps to get to a point where you can be vulnerable enough to ask for feedback?
Yeah, I guess I was raised by a wonderfully strong woman who was always very reflective in her own life, you know. So I was fortunate to grow up with a mom who had that sort of willingness to look inside as a part of my DNA. But from a professional standpoint, I know and I recognize that, you know, I've reached what for me is really, it's the pinnacle of my career at this point, right? I know if I'm going to get better, and we always have the opportunity to get better, I have to be willing to continue to, we all have that opportunity to grow. I don't care if you're the CEO or, you know, we all have that opportunity. So that's that openness, and that's the baseline, because otherwise you can just stay in your bubble.
Right. So when you are being open, Teresa, and like you said, after every interaction you're asking, is that really just a walking out of the meeting in the hallway? Hey, how'd you think I handled that question from so-and-so? Or scheduling a meeting with other members of your team to really dig into that? How does that actually physically play out in the world?
So I'll give you an example. Today I'm in our corporate headquarters in Chicago, and we do a monthly review and a forward-looking forecast with our senior leadership, with the C-suite. And at the end of today, I will go to at least two of the people who have been in that room today, and I'll say, how did I do? And hopefully they're willing and honest in their feedback. Because if they're not, and they just say, hey, you know, I'm not looking for compliments. I'm really looking for that constructive criticism, because I come back to this meeting next month, and I come back to this meeting the month after that. So as I'm preparing for that and I'm working with my team, I can be able to pull in those things. And you know, we talked a little bit earlier, it's also not a focus on where my weaknesses are. It's about also recognizing where your strengths are and how you can further develop those.
Right. So you could even, if there was a strength that you were working to develop, you could even specifically ask, I've been working on my, you know, verbal presentation. How did that piece of it go
Yep,
today? Right. Okay. Okay.
great example.
Are you also teaching your team kind of this four-step process that I just decided that you invented?
Yeah, when they're, and I definitely didn't invent it, but it's a part of that culture that you foster, you know, with your
Okay.
team. When you're asking your team, how did I do? The hope is that they are then doing the same thing with their team, right? That when that, and it takes time, it is not comfortable, it is not easy. Some people are more adaptable to that than others.
Right.
But it's that repetition. And this isn't something that you try once and then you're like, oh, that didn't go well, and walk away from it. It's a commitment. So I'm going to be open. I'm going to foster this in my team. And when you start to see the results and you start to really trust one another and you learn from one another, you see it. And that's what brings it, you know, further out within the organization.
So how are you then, if you're not necessarily worried about anti-strengths,
Mm-hmm.
you know, areas where
Yeah.
you're not,
Yeah.
where you are weak, how, when someone does bring, let's say that at the end of the day, someone says, oh, well, I didn't really think you did a good job at, you know, using the clicker,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you then
Sure.
say, I'm just bad at using the clicker. I'm never going to be good at that.
Yeah. No, so hopefully there's someone there who is good at the clicker, right?
Okay.
And so, I mean, literally. And so
Right.
if you have the opportunity, for me, for example, numbers are not my strength. The finance piece is a challenge. I'm fortunate that I get to work with a team of financial people who that's what they do for a living. It's their
Mhm.
strength. And I surround myself with them, literally. And they can help me understand, like, you know, owning what you don't know
Mhm.
and being willing to say, hey, listen, this is really hard for me. Help me understand. You know, and just taking that approach, I've found that people are very willing to teach and to
Right.
help. And when you're lucky enough to have them next to you in the room, then you can also say, Chaz is going to speak to that. And Chaz will, you know, shine where I know I will not in the same way.
Which I think says a lot about you as a leader and how you got to be in this position. When you are looking in the position that you're in right now as a leader, how are you building your team? What kind of things are you looking at? How are all that?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost is to make sure I don't have a team of people who are exactly like me. You know, I want diversity on the team, and, you know, to make sure that you have people who you know are going to be willing to stand up for an uncomfortable position, who aren't afraid of conflict, we may not agree, you know, I may win, but you have to be willing to have people who are going to stand up and say, no, Teresa,
Right.
you're way off base, and here's why. And that's, you know, one of the things I think when we talk about what's fundamental to this is knowing your worth. You know, when you really do understand where your strengths are, we bring incredible experience into our roles, and to be able to back up strong opinions with fact is critical to that success. And then when you foster that environment of being open and willing to learn from one another, that's how you move an organization forward.
Yeah. So as an organization, let's go there now. What does PSAV, are there some example programs that you can share with the participants on
Yeah.
our webcast today that you think are effective, and why, what's making them effective so that they could learn from that?
Sure. There's several things actually. I'm really fortunate from PSAV's perspective. We've really invested in diversity inclusion. And so we've created business resource groups. The Women of PSAV is one of those, and that's one of the things that really has that great alignment between us and AWE, where within the Women of PSAV chapters that we have in different cities around the US, the mentorship is one of the key aspects of that. And so, again, sort of highlighting that willingness to ask someone to mentor you if you're looking for that. And I have found that whether you're the mentee or the mentor, there's a lot to learn from each other. We also have a program we call LEAD, where when we do our annual review process, we are identifying top talent, and we bring those people from cross-functional. It's not just, it's sales, it's operations, it's finance, it's project management, and they come into our LEAD program where they actually get to spend a focused amount of time. It's a 6-month program where they learn working together, great skills in collaboration. They work together on a project that they come up with themselves and present to the C-suite, sort of Shark Tank style. And so you learn presentation skills. They have a mentor from a different functional area where they've sort of highlight for themselves, like, this is, if I was going to have a mentor, these are the traits, and these are the departments that I think I'd like them to be in. And like this year, I was the mentor for one of our leaders in finance. I just, shared with you earlier that is my, and for him, sales was an area of, like, he really wanted to better understand sales. And that relationship that he and I have, and the program has ended, he's graduated, and we still keep our one-on-ones every month.
Wow.
And it's been incredibly helpful for both of us.
So a lot of formal mentoring going on.
Yep.
Stacy Thorpe talked a little bit in our last webinar about just identifying someone who's good at something you want to be better at, which I've come to think as micro mentoring. We talk in our associations about micro volunteerism, right? So if that's a micro mentoring, maybe, have you had experience with that, Teresa, where you just, I'm going to really dig in with so-and-so about this, about using the clicker. I'm going back to my example.
Yeah, and that's what, one of the things we also talk about is differential investment. So as I'm, vice president of field sales, who is going to take my place? And who underneath them, like reaching down, and I hate even to say that's not the right, take that back. It's not reaching down, right? It's reaching out to make sure that we're identifying those people. I'll give you an example. There was a woman who was a director of sales in one of our hotels who I saw, I'm like, wow, like she's amazing. She's got a lot of runway. And so even though she was not my direct report, I said, I'm going to have lunch with her once a month. And it doesn't matter what we talk about. It's up to her. She can bring whatever she wants to that lunch. And she was promoted not long after that. I mean, and again, it's not because of me, it's because of her and the talent and her willingness to put in the time and the effort in her own development. But I think especially as women, we have that responsibility to really see each other and to recognize talent in someone. And when you see it, they may not be the one to be comfortable reaching out. When you see it, let's take that ownership as well to reach out and say, hey, I'm here and I'm happy to help you in any way that I can. It's gonna be on you, but please don't hesitate.
Right. No, I love that, because one, that says a lot about you as a leader, like you said before, knowing what you're worth, owning your own professional development, and having it in your head, I can benefit someone and therefore my company.
Yeah.
And
myself.
right? You're also going to learn along the way. Yeah, exactly.
No question.
Right.
No question. We just had downstairs today, we have another program we call the National College Leadership Program. And these are students who have just graduated from college, and they work in an operations function in one of our venues and a sales function. And they also focus on leadership. And when they graduate from the program, they're placed into a management role. And I just went down and got to meet with them, that class that's graduating today. And I said the same thing to them. I said, don't hesitate to reach outside of your hotel. And when you see someone and you recognize something that you're like, wow, I'd love to learn about how he does that or she did, like, reach out for that mentorship. Like, we're here to support you. And we're so excited about their growth, as they're just starting in their careers. It's such a great energy. And, we know that's the future.
Yeah. I find that students are so much more reflective now, like you said about being raised. I find that because people will introduce, college grads, hey, can you meet with so and so, tell them how you got started in this business. And when they're asking me questions about what classes I should have taken or what steps I might have done differently in my career, I'm learning so much about myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, I don't think I ever asked anybody the kind of questions that you're asking me now. It's really exciting.
Yeah.
So differential investment, we call it succession planning around here. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, but also two, if I'm
If you win the
retiring
lottery,
tomorrow.
not the bus. When you win the lottery.
Well, the hit by a bus just gives it that definitely not going to be able to reach out to this person anymore. How have you seen these programs aid in advancement within your company or talent retention? For someone who's in a position like yours, how can they help their company understand that it retains talent?
It does, and there's no question. I'm excited to say that from a department perspective, we have the highest retention rates in the company in sales. Which, having been a salesperson my entire career, I know how hard that is because we're always looking for the next best thing, always. Right? That's sort of the nature of the beast. And so I credit PSAV for having that willingness to invest. And it's an intense process that we go through. In that succession planning, they're very formal reviews that we do as a team. I'm hearing operations feedback about my team as I'm giving the same feedback about team members that they have. It's not solely in our vertical, and that makes us stronger, really, really does.
And Teresa, as you are working specifically with your sales team, which congratulations on your retention rates, good job. What's kind of surprised you in your own journey as a leader or in your own emphasis on that kind of professional development with your team? Have there been any surprises along the way or any time you've had to really kind of switch course?
I think, the surprises are when you think that everything is going the way it should, and then you lose someone great. That's always hard because you think about what could I have done? What did I miss? And of course I'm asking those questions. What could I have done? And even if the answer is, it's personal, it's not you, it's not you, it's me. It makes you think about, okay, but there's always that aspect. What could we have done to better support that person? Because we do pride ourselves on having that team culture of openness, accountability, vulnerability, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes you can lose someone great, but the good news is that hopefully we are investing in everyone around us so that we can move forward and continue.
That made me think, Teresa, how are you hiring into a culture like that? How are you hiring or looking for candidates who have these things?
So we do, we value having a lot of opinions in the process. One of the things I learned the hard way a long time ago, I don't ever want to interview someone by myself. What I see and what I hear may be very different when I have someone there with me who maybe isn't leading that interview. They can pick up on different things, or they have a different perspective, obviously, than me, and I want to hear their voice. So we do a lot of peer interviews along the process, so that we as a team kind of talk through a candidate's potential as we're moving them along in the process. And that's been very helpful for us.
Okay. I have some questions coming more at you, Teresa, but I want to remind everyone again that they can put some questions in the panel on the side. You can just type those into the question thing, or I will also check the chat here just to be sure. And one is, you mentioned about, taking time and seeing other women. You mentioned that a little bit. Where do you draw the line between personal and professional when it comes to really, like, you don't want to hide your personality under the rug, especially in an environment where differing opinions are accepted and encouraged, but sometimes that needs a little boost out, or it needs to have not an underline put underneath it. Basically, if we are recognizing each other as women and the fact that this struggle is real that's going on, do we want to be talking about that more openly? Do we want to be saying, hey, I saw that guy screwed you over in that meeting around the boardroom when he stole your idea? Like, how are those conversations playing out in your daily work life as a professional?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, how I think about it is less about that was wrong to the person it happened to. But I think one of the things I'm so excited about today, I mean, the struggle is real, but I think one of the benefits that we have with #MeToo, and there is a lot more focus today on diversity and inclusion, and in recognizing the importance of having different voices around the table. And I think, again, coming back to us, we have to recognize our own worth and our value, and the value of that, having that voice heard at the table, regardless of if it's a table of women or a table of men or a mix, across the board. And so when you're confident and prepared and can speak intelligently, that's the important thing, is to make sure that you have that recognition of what I have to say is important and relevant, and being willing to stick that out there. And at the same time, when you see something that isn't right, to say that too. And you may impact change, and you may find that it's not the right place to be. I've had that happen for me too, where I worked I didn't know it at the time, worked for a total misogynist. And I called him out on it, and he didn't change, and I left and joined PSAV. So sometimes you have to recognize that you can or can't impact that change, and if that's the right place for you.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Because I have found myself in some of those conversations lately, just hey, did you notice that person stood up and did this, and you did not extend the same invitation to the female, colleague who's of equal or greater experience on this issue, right? Okay.
Yeah, and not everybody is aware, and so I think sometimes it's on us to make sure that people do get clued in when they may not have, it may have just gone right.
I like to say that.
They are aware, they're like, oh, I didn't even know. I'm so sorry, I didn't even realize it. You're absolutely right. And I have worked my entire career in male-dominated industries, and I have found that they are very supportive and much more receptive than I might have thought, especially as I get older and I am more confident and willing to say something.
But sometimes you just have to go like, see that? Did you see what just happened?
Yeah.
So I like the way you say it, is just bringing awareness.
Yeah.
You also are a big believer, Teresa, in women taking care of themselves.
100%.
Right? Yes. So how can we do that a little bit more personally? Where do you go for, knowledge and inspiration and all those kinds of things?
This is not my strength. So I recognize the need, and actually doing it are two very different things. And for me personally, one of the things that I have the fortune, at one point in my life, I got to develop a great yoga practice. I am not practicing the postures of yoga today. But what I do have is the focus on the breath, and sometimes just recognizing, literally taking a moment to stop, breathe in, breathe out, completely sets and resets my intention and where I am in the day and how I approach whatever it is that's coming next. I can literally feel, just in doing that with you, Dana, like I feel different than I did 2 minutes ago.
Absolutely.
It can be that small.
And you know, it was at TSN Awards this weekend. We're talking about the brain and the breath and being mindful, and it just, that breath that we just took together, Teresa, just brings all of your executive function just back online, and everything else kind of quiets down. You get a little bit boost in your posture, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So I love it. Okay. For your professional development, what is next for Teresa? That's going to be my final question for you. Share with us, if you would, some things that you are working on, maybe personally or professionally, that you think are you want to develop for the next iteration of your career, or because you see society trends moving toward X.
Yeah, everything that we've been talking about is a work in progress for me. And these are not things that I have mastered. You know, this is a continuous improvement process. And I think that's one of the keys, is really having that focus on continuous improvement. I buy the books. You know, I'm reading a great book now by a gentleman named Alan Burstyn, who I actually got to meet at a party recently in DC through a friend. And it's called Leadership Conversations. And so just taking a little bit of time, and you know, my goal would be 15 minutes every day. It doesn't happen. But to, you know, take some time to develop my own, right, through whether it's people that I meet and book recommendations I'm asking people for, you know, from just my own perspective as a woman in business, you know, reading In Her Words from the New York Times. You know, I get that automatically sent into my email, and it always gives me a fresh perspective on something that's going on. And so I find those things that are providing inspiration in my life. You know, looking forward to Elevate in March. You know, that is going to be a great source of inspiration and opportunity to reflect, and how do we move forward, and just keeping that open mind, and continuing to look for those sources that I know are going to help bolster my own growth.
I love it. Thank you for being open-minded. Thank you for sharing your journey about professional development, how you're doing it, how you're helping other people do it, how your company's doing it. It's been very valuable conversation today, Teresa.
Right.
And thank you also for plugging Elevate so that I don't have to do it. No, but if you are involved in any of these webinars or participating, you definitely need to be following Association for Women in Events on Twitter and on Facebook, because there's great information coming out for meet and greets and for an upcoming event. And you can read all about the award winners and who's going to be on the next webcast, which will be in 2020 at the end of January. We're going to be talking to the incoming president, Marie Claire Andrews. So thank you again, Teresa. Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you for the time and the opportunity. Same to you.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and we will see you in January of 2020.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.